In the red granite hillside above Aswan, a single stone still lies half-freed from the earth, enormous and unfinished, as if the work stopped in mid-breath. What kind of mind begins a monument this size, then leaves it behind? The quarry sits in a landscape shaped by sun, stone and silence, where the Nile valley narrows and the bedrock rises hard and ancient. For millennia, this place mattered because it fed Egypt with the granite that built power itself. Long before tourists arrived, this quarry was a working frontier of empire, where builders extracted the material for statues, shrines, and obelisks. The unfinished giant is the clearest surviving record of that ambition. What makes the site so arresting is not only its scale, but its frozen state. You can still see the cuts, the channels, and the intention, as though the stone remembers the hands that released it. The story begins with a promise, a single monument that would have stood taller than any obelisk ever completed in ancient Egypt. Then, somewhere in the process, the project failed, and the quarry kept the evidence. Inside the quarry, the stone was not simply broken free. It was carefully undercut from three sides, leaving a massive spine still attached below. That method alone raises questions about planning, labor, and control. The granite here is unforgiving, dense, and full of hidden fractures. Anyone trying to shape a monolith from it had to understand the rock intimately, or risk losing months of work in a single mistake. Supporters of extraordinary interpretations often linger on that precision. They point to the straight channels, the scale of the cut, and the confidence required to imagine a finished stone weighing hundreds of tons. The most striking detail is the unfinished base itself, still attached to the bedrock as if the last separation never happened. That frozen moment lets us study a process ancient builders usually hid beneath completion. A second detail is the visible toolwork, repeated over and over across the granite surface. The marks suggest disciplined labor, but they also remind us how much effort was needed to move a stone this size at all. A third detail is the sheer logistics of transport. Even if the obelisk had been freed, it still would have had to travel from quarry to river, then from river to temple ground without cracking apart. That journey is where the mystery deepens, because Egypt did move giant stones, and yet each successful move seems to hide a chain of solutions we only partly understand. The unfinished obelisk sits at the edge of that knowledge. For some researchers, the site hints at a forgotten level of engineering confidence, perhaps even a tradition inherited from an older and more advanced source. The stone feels like evidence of ambition larger than the surviving explanations. The idea is not that the monument is impossible, but that it may belong to a wider pattern of megalithic achievement that still strains modern assumptions. Why did so many ancient cultures reach for stones that defy easy handling? In Aswan, the question is sharpened by the quarry itself. The stone was not imported from elsewhere. It was wrestled directly from the earth here, turning the landscape into both workshop and witness. That makes the site especially valuable, because it captures ancient engineering before the polishing, before the transport, before the ceremonial reveal. We are looking at process, not just product. And process is where the unanswered questions gather. How were the workers organized? How were the cuts controlled? And how did they keep such a massive form from splitting under its own stress? Skeptics question whether the site needs anything beyond known ancient methods, especially copper tools, dolerite pounders, water and patient labor. Those methods are real, and they explain a great deal. Yet the scale still resists casual dismissal. A method can be understood in theory and still feel astonishing in practice when it is applied to a stone of this magnitude. That tension is part of the fascination, the known technique and the almost unbelievable result. The quarry does not prove a lost technology, but it does preserve a level of mastery that feels almost beyond its time. The strongest believer case rests on confidence in ancient capability combined with the sheer ambition of the project. If this stone was attempted, then the builders were thinking on a scale that still challenges modern imagination. Some also see symbolic weight in the obelisk form itself, a shape tied to sun, authority, and the order of heaven. In that reading, the monument was never just stone. It was a statement aimed upward. That symbolism matters because ancient monuments often fused engineering with cosmology. The question becomes not only how they built, but why they chose forms so closely linked to the sky. A grounded reading points back to labor, planning, and trial and error. Ancient Egypt had centuries to refine stoneworking, and the unfinished obelisk may simply be the one project that exposed the limits of the method. That explanation is persuasive, but it does not erase the feeling that something went wrong at a very advanced stage. The stone was not abandoned at the beginning. It failed after serious investment. And that failure is exactly why the site still speaks. It reveals not a finished masterpiece, but the edge of ancient capability, where confidence, risk, and material reality collided. What remains unresolved is the human dimension. Who decided to attempt this size? How many hands were involved? And what pressure justified such an enormous undertaking? The monument suggests a world of larger ambitions than our records fully capture. Even the failure feels meaningful. A broken project can sometimes tell us more than a completed one, especially when the unfinished work is this grand and this carefully preserved. For mystery-minded observers, that preservation is almost uncanny. The quarry seems to have kept a page from a technical manual that was never meant to survive. And yet the page is incomplete. We can read the cuts, infer the tools, and imagine the transport, but the full sequence of decisions is still missing from the record. That missing sequence is where the extraordinary possibility keeps breathing. Was this simply a failed monument, or evidence of knowledge about stone, force, and organization that we have only partly recovered? The conventional answer remains available. Ancient engineers, working with known materials, attempted a monumental task and encountered a fatal flaw. It is a reasonable reading, and it fits much of what the quarry shows.